In spite of the weather, we have a pretty good turnout here. I know we lost anyone that was going to fly in for this. Obviously didn't come today. And our gracious briefer and host, Matt, he had to drive it, which, you know, if you're going to fly or drive, he's pretty dedicated to me to show up. So I'm John Weaver. Some of you folks know me, some don't. Long-time Alva, born here, but recently moved back last year. And I was in the Air Force 21 years. And I actually had the same job he has now as being a wing flight safety officer. And we've been pursuing, trying to get some briefs here at the airport, the local pilots to understand what's going on. Because if you notice, the T6s now are part of our pattern. And that's a recent change in the Air Force. And so part of the purpose today is for Matt to describe and talk about what's called the Mid-Air Collision Avoidance Program, which talks about all the airspace around here and where they fly and what they do. But very specifically, he's one of the T6 instructors and T6 safety officers to talk about how the T6s fly their patterns here, what radio calls they make, you know, the different restrictions they have, so that we all understand, as the local-based pilots, when we hear these radio calls in the air, what that means to us, okay? And so, without further ado, actually the way we ran into it is I was trying to look at a contact down at Vance, and I just walked in the wing safety officer, and I just happened to walk in and meet the guy that I needed to see. So Providence sometimes wins. So with that, Matt, your floor.
Thank you, John. Matt Simpson. I've been in Vance for almost 4.5 years now. Came back in 2016 after being a student here about 7-8 years ago. So enjoy the T6 and asked to stay. So I like flying around here. And like John said, I work in the safety office, but I'm also a T6 pilot. So I'm familiar with both the MAC program and where the T6 flies. The safety office, our whole goal is mishap prevention, whether it's our own planes, you know, getting to a mishap, or even interacting with the civilian flying role. So the whole mid-air collision avoidance is to prevent any kind of mishaps, both for the civilian pilots and us as well. So protecting ourselves as well as protecting everyone who flies, share the airspace with. So the MAC program is just getting out education, spreading the word what we do, where we go, what we fly, things like that. But it goes both ways, so we like getting educated on what you guys do as well. That way we can relay to our pilots what to expect and how to play nice, you know, and share the pattern. Like John said, the Air Force within the last couple of years has made a little bit more of a push for especially the students to get more exposure to different environments, going off station more, going to new airfields like uncontrolled airfields. So it's new, and some of our instructors aren't. They know how to do it, but they aren't very experienced with it, so they're not perfect. And that's where, you know, bringing back some information to them, like, this is what you can expect there, this is the kind of flying they do here. So we can help out our pilots too, as we pick up and learn more from you. All right, so what we fly, hopefully you're familiar with at least the basic planes we fly. T6 right there, single engine turboprop. That's our primary trainer for our newbies. They maybe get 12 to 15 hours prior to that. But that's about it for some of them. Others will come in with a civilian or commercial license, but many are just brand new, really have no flying experience, and now they're flying a 1,100 horsepower airplane. So it can be a little scary sometimes for us. T6 in the pattern, we can fly up to 200 knots. Our approach speeds are usually 110 to 120 knots. We're going to touch down about 85 knots for all of our patterns. T1s, you're not going to see any of those here at Alva. Only where you're going to encounter them are some bigger airports or on the level routes. See the T1, about 16,000 pound airplane, twin engine Beach Jet 400 is basically what that is. In the pattern, it'll be 100 to 250 knots. But like I said, we're mostly going to do instrument practice at Wichita or Oklahoma City, places like that. T-38s. Again, you're not going to see any of those at Alva, a little too fast. But they are much quicker, and then where you're going to encounter them are on low-level routes in the area. There you have quite a few west of Vance that are kind of circle Alva, so I'll get to the low levels here in a little bit. But in the pattern, if you encounter them at Wichita or Oklahoma City, they're going to be 160 to 300 knots, but their max speed is 710, so they can move pretty quick. All right, so while we're flying, we train over 450 pilots a year. They start out in T6, and then once they kind of get the basics down, then they're going to branch off to T38, T1. T38's for the fighter bomber guys, T1's for the pilots going heavies, tankers, cargo, things like that. So the pilots are not the only trainees at the base. There's also controllers who are in training as well. So we've got student controllers, student pilots, sometimes an interesting mix. And then, yeah, over 100,000 flying hours a year, so there's a lot going on. Typically, it's only Monday through Friday, sometimes Sunday afternoons, but currently, we plan to fly today on Saturday, which is a little unusual, but we're going to make up for some lost time, so it is possible to fly on weekends as well. All right, so there's a lot going on here, and I'll kind of brief the parts of it as I go through.
Matt, tell them how many airplanes you had stuck out from the winter freeze.
40 T6s. So we have a fleet of like 95 to 100 or somewhere in there. So it was almost half the fleet was stuck out. It was kind of a stars aligning for that. Normally we don't have that many out on one weekend, but it's normally like 15 to 20 on a weekend. Yeah, we had 40 that went cross country that weekend and couldn't make it back to weather. So yeah, even though we may not be flying locally on weekends, we do cross country trips every weekend with students where we're flying different airfields doing some navigation and outdoor practice. All right, so like I said, when we fly, MOAs, sunrise to sunset, Monday through Friday. Weekends will be in the NOTAMs. The MOAs, this blue line right here, that's the T38 and T1 MOAs. 8,000 and 23,000. They only use down to 10,000, so if you had to transit through them, you could probably get through there 8 to 10 without being complex. T6 MOAs, 7,000 and 22,000. That's this green outline over here to the east of Vance. Probably 75% of the MOA operations are going to be below 12,000. So 12,000 to 7,000 is kind of our sweet spot. So if you're flying through there, there should be a lot of traffic having to be conflicted with. All right, where we fly, so T6 is, like I said, there's more of a push to kind of get out to other airfields. 3-4 years ago, the only places we did patterns were at Vance and in Kettleman. So this yellow box right here is the alert area for Kettleman, and that's Vance right there. That's really the only where we did VFR patterns. But now we're starting to go to more uncontrolled airfields. We've been flying to Alba for a little over a year now. Guthrie, Perry, and Ponca City have been places we've been to regularly. And then within the last couple of weeks, we've added some more. So Liberal, Anthony, Wellington, Strother, and then El Reno are other uncontrolled airfields we can actually be touching those at. Now, we can still fly into other uncontrolled airfields, we just can't touch down. So like Cherokee, we could fly into there, do low approaches or simulate engine out patterns. Medford, places like that, have a short runway where we can't touch down, but it's a nice opportunity because it's right below our MOA. If we want to practice, in the MOA, okay, all right, good, your engine just failed, now what? Okay, then they have to find an airfield and glide down to the airfield. So.
What's your minimum runway length?
Published, it's 4,000 feet. Without an engine, like if we have no kidding, had to land it, we could do 3,000 feet. But for plane touching goes, only do 4,000. All right. So yeah, lots of different airfields. You can find T6, T38s. Most of them are going to stick to Tinker, McConnell Air Force bases, Tulsa, OKC, Wichita. Again, just I-4 trainings, and I can do a lot of patterns there. And then Vance. Their pattern, the T38 pattern is to the west of Vance. The T6 pattern is to the east. So if you're flying in the area, I recommend just staying clear of the alert area. And if not, just talk to tower. They have no problem talking both tower and approach. They don't mind talking to civilian traffic. They much prefer having you guys on frequency. That way they can relay to you where traffic is. All right, and then T1s, again, Vance, they may go down to Clinton Sherman for patterns, and then other than that, it's just OKC, Wichita, places like that. Woodring, T6s also use Woodring on the east side of Enid. I don't know if any of you fly it there, but it's almost a pseudo-auxiliary field for us because it's so close. A nice long runway. T38s may go in there occasionally as a divert option. T1s use it occasionally as well. So the woodring can get a little busy. All right, going back to Kegelman, since it's fairly close. Let's see. Yeah, that's Alva right here. Kegelman, probably only about 20 miles east. So lots of T6 training going on there. Like I said, the students are brand new, so that's where we kind of go to get them their basic, their first landings. So they're not going to be good. It's very task intensive for the instructors as well, because we're trying to keep them safe. So our essay on what's going on around us sometimes is not great. And we actually have some
When is the Kegelman Tower, man?
No.
Oh, it's not.
So the
You guys fly in IPs up in RSU, right?
so it's an RSU, which is called a Runway Supervisory Unit. It's just instructors that are controlling the pattern. But recently we've gone away from that whole program. So even Kegelman is uncontrolled for the most part. Lots of other reasons why that's going that direction, but yeah. So even if you were able to talk to Kegelman, there's not going to be a controller there. It's just like if we're at Alva, it's making position reports to each other. All right. Kegelman, their VHF frequency is 139.9. I didn't know until recently. I guess that's out of the range of most civilian VHF radios, so that doesn't really do you guys much any good. So yeah, I recommend avoiding it, or at least deconflicting altitudes. We fly at 1,000 feet, typically in pattern, sometimes at 500 feet. So if you do have to cross the alert area, do it at least 2,000 or 3,000 feet above us to give us some room. But when we do our simulated engine out patterns, we'll be at 3,000 feet AGL. So there's still potential for some conflicts. Yeah, and then for MOAs, yeah, if you do have to pass through, please talk to when you approach frequencies. They're on the little pamphlets. The ones in green cover the T6 MOAs, the ones in blue cover the T38 MOAs. And just check in, let them know what you're doing. If nothing else, that way they can relay to us where the traffic is, what your intentions are, and we can plan around it. In the MOAs for the T6s, there's going to be a lot of high performance training, formation, aerobatics. So our altitudes are going to be changing, up to 6,000 feet a minute. So it can be tough to spot and then deflect from an airplane that we can't see. And if approach tells us that, hey, there's traffic in our MOA, typically we're just kind of pause training and wait for them to clear out. So inconvenient, but it's better to know that they're there and talk to somebody rather than just trucking through it without checking in. Let's see. We also have our initial solos. So the first time they go solo in T6 now, they're going to be going to the MOA also. So it could be a student's first time by themselves in an airplane in the MOA, and that's not. I wouldn't want to be anywhere near them in another airplane. So I don't want you guys getting close to them either, because they're pretty unpredictable. We also do formation solos too. Further on in the program, so they're a little bit better, a little bit more time under their butts, but again, they're still pretty new students solo, and that's pretty task intensive for the IP and the other plane as well. We're going to have to deal with the solo student in another airplane and keep them safe. T-38s, they actually do even more solo sorties. Now they're going to be a little bit more experienced in the T-38 more time. Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
So where are you talking about? Kegelman? Is that where you're? Is that
Sorry,
where
I'm talking about the MOAs.
all.
Matt, you want to expand that?
Yeah, I can zoom in. So the T6 MOAs kind of stretch all the way up here, just from Anthony down to almost Kingfisher. And as far west is just above Cherokee, and far east, basically I-35. So yeah, the MOAs, they use a block of altitude to do their aerobatics, stalls, slow flight, things like that. But yeah, they're going to be solo, and our solo students are doing aerobatics too. So we teach them how to do like a loop, aileron roll, barrel rolls, things like that, which can take up to 4,000 feet. So yeah, that's.
So if we're flying into your pattern through your airspace, through your MOA, right, and we've identified ourselves and they want to fly over it, are you telling me that they will advise us if they're going to be in that area, or do we need to completely totally avoid that?
No, I mean, there's nothing that says you can't fly through the MOA. I mean, we prefer not, just because of the high volume of stuff there, but yeah, if you need to go through there at whatever altitude, if you check in, they'll tell you, yes, there's T6 training going on. I mean, they won't be specific on like it's a solo student or anything like that, but they will tell you there's, training going on, and then they'll relay to us that there's traffic, at this position, take this direction, this altitude. And if you relay what your intentions are, where you're going, things like that, that's more information they can relay to us. And then, if it happens to be within our block, if you're kind of in one corner, we can keep ourselves in the other corner, knowing that, hey, they're going to be going this direction, they're not going to be in conflict, we can continue training, things like that. So that's where communication is helpful. You don't necessarily have to change what you're doing. It's not like we're saying, no, you can't come through here, but as long as you just talk to us.
Matt, if I may pile on. So if you're IFR, and I know there's not a lot of IFR pilots in the group, but if you're on an IFR flight plan, they will vector you around the MOA. You will not be, if the MOA is active, they will, and you have to take those vectors because you're on instrument clearance. If you're VFR flight following, they'll give you a vector, but understand you don't have to take that vector. But if you don't, what they're going to start doing is shuffling these guys over to a corner or somewhere away from them. And if you just blow through the MOA that's already active, you're an unknown identity with an unknown altitude. They'll actually either terminate the training or move to a complete sector. And like what he was just saying, if they're training or you got a solo student out there, that's just a little head grenade that's going off inside there. So from our side, what we can help them is always talk to Vance approach, or on weekends talk to Kansas City and just say, hey, are the MOAs active? And they'll say, no, they're cold. Well, then you just blast right on through them. But if they say they are active, then you'll say, well, what bottom are they using? And if they're, let's say, that one, they're 10,000, well, then you can go through there at 9,000 going east now, or 9,500.
So that brings a great question. Is if the control tower at Vance is not active, does that mean there's not training going on, or are there training when that tower is closed? Is there training when that tower is closed?
For the most part, that's correct. Yeah, if the tower and approach are closed, there's probably not going to be training going on. The caveat to that is the tower is not going to be open normally on Saturday or Sunday mornings, but we can say somebody did a cross country where they left Friday afternoon, they go to Oklahoma City for the night, and they want to come back and use the MOA on Saturday. We can reserve the MOA through Kansas City where we activate the MOA basically, and then we use the MOA for a certain amount of time without Vance approach or Vance tower being open. Now that situation is not nearly as common, and it's probably only a couple airplanes, so it's not a high volume traffic. In those situations, it'll be in the NOTAMs too, since we're going to Kansas City, they'll put it in the Kansas City center NOTAMs. So if you check the center NOTAMs, KZE, KC, and that'll tell you if the MOAs are active.
Are those Vance only MOAs, or can any military unit book them?
Technically, any military unit can book them, but that really never happens.
Yeah.
I've never seen it. But yes, during the week, if the tower and the approach are closed, the MOAs are going to be closed as well.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, go ahead.
I've got it's not even registered, over at the corner of Highway 38 and 11, and it's right in the very, right there in the northwest corner of your Kegelman. No, in the yellow box, Kegelman.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And it's right there at the intersection, and I see, I've just got the grass strip there, but I see the pipeline going through there all the time. Do they talk to you, or do they?
Well, it's interesting to bring that up. We actually had an issue with pipeline aircraft a couple weeks ago where they got a little close and our power is active. So I reached out to a couple of those companies. There's one company out of Edmond, I think, that does a lot of that. Traditionally, no, they didn't tell us. They didn't give us a call beforehand, like, hey, we're going to be operating today. So they do now, where I reached out and asked, hey, I'm not telling you don't work up here. I mean, obviously it's an alert area. You can fly through here all you want, but please just give us a heads up. So they have been calling us this past week. Our guys can be up there, doing pipeline stuff.
Well, now, if I'm flying over there to my strip, which is in your Kegelman MOA, and is that the way to do it, or should I go ahead and call and let you know I'm there? I mean,
I wouldn't bother calling just for if you're just going in and out.
I'm flying from here over to there.
Yeah, I wouldn't bother with like going through that just if you're, now if you're going to do in like, you know, if you're staying in the area, continuing to fly like a pipeline, they're going to be zigzagging across and staying there for a while, that's fine. Yeah, I wouldn't bother calling. I would say just at least heads up on the frequency, but you know, if you can't get to that frequency, then that doesn't help you any, so. Just, so you said it's up here in the kind of just northwest corner?
I'm right in the corner.
Okay.
It's right there at the intersection of 38 and 11. Coming north of the lake, the
This right here?
38 comes north of the lake, and then 11 goes across there.
Okay, so that's 11 right there?
Yeah, just right there, right at the edge.
West down here.
Okay. Yeah, I think that far west, it's west of the Kegelman Center line?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, then that should not be an issue.
Yeah, we're
Because all of
about
our,
4 or 5 miles west of that.
yeah, all of our traffic is to the east of the runway.
Okay.
We do our simulated engine out patterns to the west, but those stay pretty much right on top of that dam on the lake. So we won't go that far west and north.
All right.
So yeah, as long as you're west of the center line, yeah, that's not a problem.
Okay.
Like I said, most of our patterns are 1,000 feet. Every now and then we'll drop down to 500 feet for a straight in. And so on one 7 day we might get 500 feet, but we only go 2 to 3 miles north of the field for that. We don't use up the whole alert area, you know, so we don't really go that far north of 11.
Awesome, thanks.
So you go back to the MOAs. So the MOA, I don't have it displayed here because we're kind of muddy at the chart, but we chop up the MOA into, you know, smaller blocks that they assign to us. And it's not indicated here either, but we have a low block, which is 7 to 12,000, then a high block, which is 14 to 22,000. So there is a 2,000 foot gap from 12 to 14,000 that there is no activity. That's used just for transiting traffic. A lot of our traffic that's IFR, going up to Wichita, they use 13,000 to just send us through the MOAs. So that's another option. If you can get that high is 12,500, 13,500. Or if you're IFR, just go to 14,000 and they can get you through. All right. The Western MOAs, so the T38s, T1s, again, those are chopped up into smaller blocks, but they don't have like a high and a low. It's just typically 10 to 20 feet. And T38s, when they do a loop, it'll take up 10,000 feet. So they get a lot of altitude when they're doing any kind of aerobatics or formation flying. The T1s and the MOAs, their maneuver is pretty benign against beach jet. It's not very capable. They don't really do a whole lot more anyway. All right, so next thing is the low-level routes. So that's what these corridors, these colored corridors are. Let's see. So just for reference, here's Alva right here, and you can see there's a lot of routes in the area. These are not the routes owned by Vance. I just only displayed the ones that are active. We actually fly. There are some others that you might find on en route charts. They kind of overlap with these, but to reduce the clutter, I didn't include those on the chart. These are just the ones you're going to find if everything's flying. So the red, this one, which is IR 185, starts up here just north of Alva, kind of goes this way. And then IR 171 starts down here, comes this way. Those two are probably the most heavily flown by T-38s. The orange, IR 183, starts right here, just south of Alva. And kind of goes further to the south, loops back around. That one's kind of moderately used. And then IR 145 kind of starts further south, almost closer to Vance. This one kind of comes up this way, and it ends just southwest of Alva. Again, that's kind of moderate use. And then there's another one that kind of goes out to the east, or should be the west, 182, 183. The ones in yellow are like the lowest usage. So Really, the big player for you guys flying in and out of Alpha is 185 because they're so close to Alpha for a lot of the time. And the T-38s, make sure I get the speeds right. Let's see. I think they're going to fly about 360 knots on a low level at 500 feet AGL. So if you're flying 500 feet co-altitude, a plane moving that fast, by the time you see it, it's probably going to be too late. So tough part with that is there's no like VHF frequency to broadcast on that we use to make position reports, things like that. If they're doing an IR route, they should be talking to Kansas City Center. So if you have any questions about the route, you can always, if you're in the air, contact Kansas City Center. They're the ones that control the route. Other questions, you can call flight service. They should have some information on the route. On this chart, included kind of a schedule when the routes are active. So we don't fly every route every day because they conflict with each other. So this kind of help deconflict scheduling. So if you have this map, you can tell, all right, today is Saturday. So T-38s can be flying 181, 183. T1s might be on 185. And then you can go over to the chart. And you can, it's 183, 181. So T-38s are going to be going south or west. T1s might be on 185. You can tell which one's active on a given day. A lot of times, like the specific entry time isn't known until maybe an hour before they go in, or if they need to change it while they're in flight, that could also change. So having a specific time when the plane's going to be on it is tough to find out.
On this chart, it says Thursday, the T-38s are flying R-195, and they were. I have a farm strip
Yeah.
northwest of here,
Yeah.
and I was out looking for cattle on the river, and one of my vintage airplanes. So is that a radar altimeter for 500 feet? I mean, are they pretty well damn sure not going to be below 500?
They don't have a radar altimeter, but what part of the route planning is they'll pick an MSL altitude that gives them 500 foot clearance for that leg.
Because I try to stay like 200 or 300 feet, because I know you guys are out there, but I have no transponder,
Yeah.
just a handheld radio.
Yeah, they're not going to go below 500 feet for the most part. I mean, again, student training, hopefully they start to catch it pretty quick. They get a little low, but yeah, each leg, so before each turn point, they'll pick an MSL altitude to fly. Since they don't have a radar altimeter, they'll just pick 1800 MSL or 1600 MSL, whatever that leg. They'll do the study and figure out where the obstacles are, where the terrain is. But generally, it's 500 feet, but no lower than that. They're not going to be going 200 or 300 feet.
Is this pretty much set in stone in the schedule?
Yes.
I also fly to Eastern Kansas all the time. If I'm on 182, it's usually on an IR flight. If I'm on my vintage airplanes, no transponder, no ADS-B.
Yeah.
So I have ADS-B in, so I can see you guys out there.
Okay.
And one thing I'd like to comment on is you guys talk really well on the radio. I've been really impressed with the position reports from you over here.
Okay, that's good to hear.
I really appreciate that.
Yeah. Yeah, and again, that's a tough part because there's no like VHF like common frequency for the low levels where we can broadcast civilian radio. And the T-38s, they use UHF primarily anyway. They don't really use the VHF, so which makes it tougher.
Yeah, I saw Perry, after I landed, I saw Perry going across from me and they were smoking.
Yeah. Yeah, and they'll do formation, like you said, it'll be a pair of them sometimes. They'll do formation on levels as well. So it could be two planes up to a mile, 2 miles apart at times. All right. So yeah, those IR routes are all to the west of Vance, kind of over here. This blue route right here, it also comes around Alva. That's a slow route, SR, 235 and 253. Same points, but in reverse. So it's the same corridor. They just may be one direction one day, the other direction the other day. This route, we're only going to fly on Mondays and Fridays because it just conflicts with the other IR routes. So those aren't active. So the blue, the SR, that'll be T6s, T1s. We'll fly those. Both T1s and T6s will fly in formation as well, it's two-ship formation. Ground speed will be planned at 210 for those, so those will be a little bit slower. But again, we're not going to be monitoring the frequency that I think you guys will have access to. We monitor a uniform flight service frequency, and we'll make an announcement when we enter. So hopefully flight service is aware that we're there. So again, if you want to contact them, hopefully they can give you some info if you have questions. But the slow route, again, will be at 500 feet, just like the other routes, 500 AGL. Sometimes higher, depending on birds or weather or towers, uncharted, things like a wind farm down here that's popped up. All right. And then other low-level routes. So there's VR routes. Similar to IR, it would be flown at higher speeds, but can't do it in the weather. It needs to be visual. This one's not flown as much as it used to be. T1s used to fly this a little bit more than they do now. But you won't find any T38s or T6s on that route. Typically, it's just T1s. And this route over here, while it's not close to Alpha necessarily, it's SR routes. It kind of starts just south of Ponca City. That is by far our most heavily flown route. So if you fly in that area, near Ponca City, area, Stillwater, or if you transit, just going like Tulsa, Bartlesville, somewhere like that. That probably has like 5 times the amount of traffic as any of our other routes. So this one we fly, I think, any day of the week. This one is active. Yep. So that's why it's so popular. Is just, there's no conflicts. You'll find planes on there every day. So definitely be cautious if you're flying around that one. Same rules: 210 ground speed, 500 AGL. That's where you expect it runs. All right, so going more on the T6 patterns. So this picture up here in the top left, that's just kind of your basic FAA standard watch pattern. And we teach our instructors and students to adhere to the FAA rules on uncontrolled airfields. So the position ports should be the same as what you're doing. Announce about 10 miles out with the cardinal direction, altitude, intentions. We'll do enter downwind or enter from a straight in. If we're going to enter from downwind, we'll do a 45-degree entry. Our pattern altitude will be 1500 because of the turboprop. If we're entering from the opposite side, so say you guys have left traffic on 36 out here. If we're coming from Vance, we're going to have to overfly the airfield to enter the left downwind. So we're going to do the standard FAA teardrop. We're across the field, beam the runway or perpendicular to the runway, 500 feet above our altitude, or pattern altitude, so 2,000 AGL, which is what, 3,000 out here. So we'll cross the field at 3,000, get out past downwind, and we'll teardrop, descend 500 feet into downwind. So kind of look like come across here, teardrop, and then enter at our pattern altitude of 2,500 and so. And we should be making position reports on downwind, base, final, crosswind, all to see positions of the pattern. Now where things get a little different for us is we might be practicing some of our simulated engine out patterns. We should be using like plain language terminology. We have like in our own regulations, high key, low key, which doesn't mean anything to you necessarily. They shouldn't be saying those terms. They should just be saying overhead the field at this altitude, simulated engine out pattern, left spiral, runway 18, whatever it may be. Here's a little graphic on what it is. Basically, we're going to be over top the runway at 3,000 feet AGL, pull the power back, and it's just a descending spiral. Simulated, we don't have any power. I personally haven't done any single engine civilian flying. I don't know if it's probably a similar pattern to what Cessna might do. I don't know if they do any single engine or engine out patterns. Is that a thing?
I'll reserve my comment.
Okay, so yeah, I don't know how much this is seen in the civilian world, so maybe not at all. The way the pattern works, so we'll start over the field. Will be a beam, the approach end, halfway down, so 1,500 feet above the ground, and then just continue that turn all the way in.
And how far is that lateral spacing about from the airfield?
About
in.
3/4 of a mile.
Okay.
When we are being the approach end. At that point, I mean, some people might call it downwind. I mean, we're not really on downwind. That's kind of the closest position we can call. Others will just wait till they're on a base, where they're basically right here. But again, it's not your normal base position because we're only, half a mile from the runway at that point. Speeds, we're going to be 120 through the whole thing until we're on final and slow down about 80, 90 knots to touchdown. Any questions on our engine out patterns? Those are kind of different. But again, hopefully our pilots are making, just plain language calls and just be descriptive on what.
And I'll have a comment here, just like Bob and I both fly SFOs when we're flying these jets, and you have to practice them as part of your check ride profile. But for all the folks here, if you're on downwind and you're flying your Taylor craft or your Cub, and you're doing 65 knots, if you hear the pattern that one of these T6s is overhead 3,000, you're probably going to be a conflict there on that base pattern. And he's coming down, so he is looking the best over his nose he can. And if you got a high wing, unless you got the windows up there, so just think about yourself. Unless you're moving quite a bit faster. What's your SFO speed? 160.
We're 120.
120
through most of the pattern, and then as we're turning to final, we'll start slowing down to eventually.
So that's a bonanza speed, basically, or max is 210 speed. But if you're flying slower than that, just realize if he calls overhead and you're on one of those downwinds, you might just want to do a 360 or tell the guy, hey, I'm a conflict, or you guys, then we announce our position, and it's up to him to avoid us.
Yeah, that's not going to bother anybody if you just speak up and say, we're on base, potential conflict.
Yep.
Our guys would, okay, we'll just orbit up here and wait for them to clear out of the way, and then we'll do our pattern. So,
Because under nose visibility in SFO is an issue, directly underneath the nose.
yeah, anybody that's on downwind, because we're in a continuous turn, so we're kind of banked towards the runway for the most part. Our pitch angles, we can see a little bit below us, but it's anybody that might be, kind of down and to the right or outside of us slightly. But again, it's also a very busy pattern, more so than normal visual patterns. Again, the students flying it, we're trying to keep them from overspeeding or getting into a weird situation. So
The key is the time that these guys have,
yeah,
what you're dealing with.
yeah, the students are very low time, most of them. So it is a lot of work for instructors if the student's not doing so high.
Still use the term their hair is on fire
Oh yeah.
all the time.
Yeah, so again, biggest thing is just communicate. So if you're on frequency, just speak up, let us know where you're at, and that helps us adjust things as needed. If we need to go around and reset, it's not a big deal. All right, so other things for the T6 operations. We might also be doing some instrument approaches under VFR. So for the pilots that are not familiar with IFR instrument approaches, they should be making, again, just position reports. Instead of saying we are at the so-and-so fix, they'll just say straight in 10 miles or straight in 8 miles. That's what they should be doing now. Again, sometimes newer IPs think that everybody knows what the instrument approach is, and they'll just report their path and think everybody knows what they're talking about. So, also with the instrument approaches with VFR, those are also very task intensive for the IPs, because now we're trying to act as a radar controller, an instructor, and we're handling radios for them. So those can be pretty busy to deflect. So again, just speak up if things might seem like there can be a conflict. We might do some holding practice if there's a published holding pattern and things like that. All right, speeds in the pattern. Like I said, generally speaking, 120 to 150. We can fly technically up to 200 knots in the uncontrolled pattern. I don't think most people are going to get that fast unless they're flying up initial, but we're not going to be flying up initial with any civilians in the pattern. Other restrictions we have through the Air Force, we cannot fly to an uncontrolled pattern with more than 4 aircraft. So if there's 2 civilians, two other T6s there, and we show up over to number 5, then we're gonna have to leave. So we're not gonna flood a pattern and overwhelm it. All right, so bigger review on our airspace where we fly, LOAs, low levels, alert areas, both the Kegel and Advance, and T6 patterns that we're gonna fly at ETAs. I know there's probably lots of questions, hopefully, so feel free to fire away and let me know if you guys have any more.
Now, before you go to the question, what's a typical call sign you're using? What do we expect to hear on the radio?
So there's actually probably quite a few you could hear. So the 8th, we actually have like 6 or 7 different call signs. So ammo, badger, cobra, dog, evil, fury, recon, and ball. And it'll be that call sign with a 2-number or 2-digit number. So like ball 24, badger 04, things like that. The 33rd, they generally just use dragging or hook as their call signs. There's some others, but those are the primary ones that you'll hear.
How do you get your name?
What's
Do you-
that?
Well,
My call sign?
yeah, your call sign, or
The one that I fly with, or like my nickname?
your nickname. How do you get that?
Well, we still have roll calls. I don't know if you're familiar with roll calls. I'm sure John could fill you in on that whole tradition. But it's basically just an event that we have where we kind of lots of ridicule and calling out other IPs for shenanigans. So,
How did you get Bronco, if you can tell us?
well, I was lucky enough to not break anything or screw anything up, so I didn't get a call sign. It's too disparaging. It's not exactly PC either. But, so our last name's Simpson. And I'm big and white and slow. Like OJ's Bronco. So, there's an OJ reference. So
So do you all have ADS-BN? Do you use ADS at all?
we have ADS-B out. We have given most of our IPs like a Stratus that they can fly with. That gives us ADS-BN. But it's not a required thing for them to fly with or to have active. Most people will do it, like if they have the opportunity because they want that SA. So a lot of people do have that capability. Now it won't display on our instruments, but we can connect to our tablets and have that info.
So it's basically the instructor's discretion of whether they use it or whether they don't.
Correct.
But your aircraft is always transmitting ADS-B out,
Yes.
so we will have them on our stuff.
As a civilian, even though we're paying for we would encourage you to use it.
No, I mean, I think most people would like to have it.
Yeah.
But why it's not required yet, it's probably, I don't know if it's a budget thing or a policy thing, I don't know, it's on my pay grade, but, it hasn't been mandated yet.
Huh.
We're mandated to have it.
ADS-BN?
In and out, just out.
Just out. How do you have another question, do you?
Yeah, it was about radio monitoring, or whether you were monitoring at all. I don't think you've identified that.
Okay.
And the other one that I have that is somewhat selfish for the airport, but by you guys flying into our pattern now and even touching down occasionally, are we able to use those as cycles for our runway? And do you report those? Or are
I
they
think
reported?
so. I mean, I'm not too well versed on how that works with the FAA. From my understanding, yes. Now, we aren't involved in that process of, if you're trying to get traffic counts reported to the FAA, exactly things like that, the funding. We kind of stay out of that. Like, if you want to use the numbers, I mean, that's probably a question for the FAA, like, hey, can we use this traffic? Which I'm pretty sure you can, but I'm by no means an expert on that. So, now we don't provide data to you, like, hey, we did this many patterns at your field, go use this to get more money. Because I mean, one, we don't really track specifically based on airfield, but we also aren't don't want to get that perception of like, hey, we're gonna go help this airport out, but not this one, get more money kind of thing.
We don't think you're gonna wear out our concrete runway, but we'd like to use those cycles.
Oh, no, absolutely, like, I mean, if you have a way to like log that or get at least a pretty close estimate, yeah, by all means, like, use that.
Might have to explain what you said to me about. So they may go to 3 or 4 or 5 different fields in, of course, one sortie. So it's just being able to track on the grade sheet X number of patterns we're going to Alva. We already kind of, after you asked the question, we talked about it. There's no logistical way. It's really more the owners of Alva to track how many patterns. And touch and goes, we're done. And it has to be just an approximation. And you show the FAA the realistic numbers, and if we can use them, it's going to help us a bunch.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, we'll track gear cycles landings for every sortie, but a lot of times we'll drop into Kegelman, hop over to Alva or go to Anthony and go to multiple places, but then do patterns when we get back at Vance. And at that point, it's hard to log. It's when you're doing that much pattern training and the students are that terrible and you're just trying to keep yourself from, breaking anything. Yeah, we don't have a good way to go back and look at it. And then our traffic counts that the tower, the tower controllers are just going to be quicker. So, yeah.
Well, that's what people meant to use it.
So you were talking about Cagelman over here. What is the best frequency to talk to Vance Approach at Cagelman?
Let's see.
11977.
And there's also 118075.
There it is. Oh, it is.
So there's about 3 of them. That's
Yes. Yeah, sorry, I'll grab one of these. So, yeah, there's a few frequencies on here. Nope. Nope, maybe it's in this one, but sorry about that. I got posters here too to put up, and they should be on there. Hopefully it's on this map.
It's on page 11.
So the question would be is that if you're flying through that area, or Brent's got a student that you're over in that area, and you advise them that you're in that area, are they going to say, hey, monitor frequency ABCD because, there is traffic in the area, or they're just going to take that advice? I mean, it's just a question, right? I mean, I think, to Brandon's point, I think you'd like to know what frequency to listen to see where they're at, so you can figure that out if he's in that area.
So our T6 is when we're at the MOAs, we're going to use our uniform as our primary radio to talk to approach. Now, approach controllers are going to be simulcasting both on uniform and VHF. So if they're talking to you, we're going to hear that. We may not hear you respond, but we can listen and at least hear what approach is saying. And then when they talk to you, even if we don't hear it, they will find us on whatever frequency that we're on, give us an advisory, and then we'll adjust as necessary based on your altitude or where you're flying at.
And hopefully they decided to use the ADS-B in and they have an appropriate iPad in their watch.
Yeah, well, we have TAS as well in the airplane, so if you're squawking, we'll pick it up on our TAS at least. So we may not have like the full ADS-B info, but we'll have the altitude and position.
At least you'll see something.
Yeah.
Or something.
Yeah. All right, so yeah, there's a bunch of frequencies. Let's see, advanced approach control east, that 125.45. That's really for this section of NOAA to the east and south. The approach north, 118.075. That one's going to cover this area right here. And then Vance approach control west, that 126.75. That one's going to kind of cover this airspace around just over top of that harbor. So
that would be your recommendation?
yeah. But that said, if you check in on one and it's not necessarily the right sector, they'll either give you the traffic advisories you need or they'll send you to the appropriate frequency. So yeah, maybe a little bit more work if you got to switch frequency again, but they'll still be helpful and get you to where you need to be. And talking to who you talk to. So, yeah. Just check on any of them if you're not sure, and we'll get you there.
So you guys are over here in the pattern, and I've got a brand new student pilot going out on his first solo. And I've had this happen. And I'll get in here on the radio and say, hey fellas, I got a brand new pilot going to come up there in the pattern, and most of the time it's really good.
Yeah.
Is that kind of, do you guys have any type of thing that you do that with, or what is kosher at that moment? Because, my guys are out there at an 80-mile-an-hour airplane flying about the same pattern you guys are with your brand new students.
Yeah.
And we could have a real conflict.
Yeah, well, we're not going to have any solo students here. That said, yeah, if you make the announcement, hey, we've got a brand new student up here, that's helpful, because if they do stay, they'll be a little bit more alert, try and stay out of the way. And we recognize our speeds are going to be a lot different, so we'll do what we can, just a little bit more maneuverable in a lot of cases to, stay out of your way and, not be conflicts. And if it's too much work for the IP and it's just, not enough, just go somewhere else, because we got the legs to go other places also. So, there's no specific guidance. If you have this kind of plane pattern, you need to leave, but I think a lot of IPs recognize a situation where it might be a little bit not worth the risk to hang around. So.
Well, I got a little blue and white 172 that ends in uniform, and when you hear it in the area, I can guarantee you it's student pilots in the pattern. They're already stressed to the max.
Right.
And, a great big fast airplane comes in, and see purple dust come out of their heads.
Yeah, I know the feeling. But no, it's good to know that there's student training up here also. And that's something we can relay to our guys, like, hey, just keep an ear out for that. They've
been really good to us. If we're in the pattern on 1-8, making left traffic, I've seen them do right patterns over here, so we're trying to stay on each other's way.
Okay, good.
The only time that I really get concerned is when we're doing, that first solo.
Yeah, the biggest thing, if you can make an announcement on the radio, there's a T6 in the pattern, just to tell them it's like an initial solo. They'll be very familiar with how risky that can be, so.
The air traffic controlling training that you're doing at the tower at Vance, is there always an instructor behind them?
Yeah, as well. If there's student training going on in the approach control of the tower, there's always an instructor there. We hear them all the time where the student will make a weird radio call or something's not correct, and the instructor jumps on right afterward and corrects them.
I don't know if it's ever happened to anybody else, but several times, and it's not a criticism, it's just a question. If you start flying over here, you're talking to Vance first. That's your first leg, right? And about half the time they release you from the airspace. About half the time they'll pass you on to the next leg. What's protocol?
As far as who to talk to, or if we're going to.
Now, where do they go to? In other words, if you've got a flight, if you're going through your MOA, but you start at Vance, are they instructed to pass you on, or are they instructed to cancel flight following and make you reinitialize it?
If you're doing flight following, they should pass you on to, should be typically Kansas City Center.
Right.
Now, if you're not doing flight following, then they might not, but they should be handing you off to next. If you're going up to Wichita, you do Wichita Bridge.
Right.
Otherwise, Kansas City Center.
I just want to look at protocol. Sometimes it happens, sometimes it doesn't. So it's hit and miss. Does anybody else experience that?
Yeah. Sometimes they hand you off and sometimes they don't.
It could be workload. If they've got 20 T6s airborne and MOAs, they're maxed out, they may just put that to the bottom of the list and may not be able to get to it. That could be it also. We don't fly a ton of VFR within Vance's airspace, so I can't say from personal experience. I don't remember if they've missed our switch or not. Now, if you're IFR, they'll definitely do it, but flight flying should.
Is there a corridor? Everyone talks about the Vance corridor for going east to west bound. I think Bruce, Pat, I think you were telling me, is there a defined corridor that we can fly VFR in between the two alert areas? Does anyone else do that?
There used to be, but I don't think it's there anymore.
That's what
It
I'm
used to be
saying.
published at 3,000 feet.
Yeah.
Right straight down 412.
If that's not true anymore, so.
No. No, I think that's been done away with.
If you're looking to go like between the alert areas, yeah, trying to think, yeah.
We call it a Oklahoma corridor.
Yeah.
Ported over Oklahoma. Oh, really? Yeah, I don't know, I think they've changed traffic patterns and maybe.
So, guys, the reason I want to bring that up is, I never heard of it. I heard you guys talking about it. I go, man, I've never seen any map that has a corridor on it. So just realize if you're flying from the knowledge of 10 years ago when there was a corridor, that's a very high density going from the Kegma back to the airport. And if you think you're in protected airspace at 3,500 or 3,000 feet, you're probably not. You need to be talking advanced approach.
Yeah, I think that was done away about 10 years
You're
ago.
not,
20 years ago, that was a big deal.
you're just not old enough if you don't remember the Oklahoma.
Yeah,
I heard about it.
don't remember they did course.
What's that?
The Knoll?
I was thinking it's 2,500 feet. We went through there.
Well, it may have been. It was
2,500 foot. If you're going east, you follow the right-hand side of the road. And if you're going west, you're on
Just
the
gotta give you an idea,
right-hand
if you
side.
find your base, I know you guys talk about Oklahoma and
basically.
corridors, so. I got 1-7 today, and it's a T-38 pattern, we're gonna be entering up here by carrier. So it extends pretty far out of the class Delta. You see, like, if you're over up here, like towards Hillsdale, then you kind of be out of the way. If you're having to transit east. Let's see. And obviously, a 3-5 day is not going to be as intrusive. Yeah, I think south of the airfield, down past Bison. That's where I can go. Yeah, Hillsdale is probably going to be kind of up in the, oh yeah, there's Hillsdale. So, yeah, you can kind of split between the alert areas. I don't know what road that is, but kind of goes to Goldtree and Hillsdale. That's kind of the best bet. You got to transit between them. But there, yeah, there is a defined procedural corridor that's published.
So the point I was going to try to make out of this was, there's no defined corridor anymore, and I remember hearing you guys talk about it. But if those both alert areas are open and active, not only you're trying to get from Alva somewhere over to the east, all people from the east trying to get west are going through there as well. You would hope that you're at the correct altitudes, but I would say I always call advanced approach to transition through there and just get flat falling for that section, just because the potential for running into someone closer than you want to be is pretty high. So just we're pretty wise.
Just check with approach. Even if you don't get flight following, at least they can give you SA on the traffic in the area.
Right.
You know, even though the pattern doesn't go any further than the alert area, but there's still T-38s, T-1s, fine instrument approaches. You know, so that'll extend well north of the field to get landed and final. And they should be above 3,000, but so it depends what altitude you're flying at. So that's why I just talk to approach, they can give you the best help. And I know there's a question of frequencies, but talk to one, they'll get you where you need to be. And it's probably better depicted on the poster. Same map, but down here it gives you the frequencies. They're color coded, so the green ones will get you Kegelman or the T6 areas, and these blue ones will get you to the west. So it'll kind of help you. If you know you're transiting through, you can have that frequency ready to go beforehand.
Have you got any more of those maps?
I've got some more posters if you.
I don't know, I'll put one up at Cherokee.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, I got a few extras.
So if we're going through there on a Saturday morning, whatever we call Vance approach, or just VFR, we're not picking up an hour flight plan, and nobody answers, Does that mean
They're
you
closed.
guys are all home for the weekend?
Yeah, if nobody answers, they're closed, you're not gonna have the local flying.
Nobody's out there.
Nope.
So, I want to across Timberland, I'm okay.
You can buzz the tower and take them now when they're closed.
Yeah, I mean, again, like, even when it's maxed out alert area, I mean, there's nothing that says you can't go in there. Now, I mean, nobody's gonna be flying there on a Saturday, so, yeah, I mean, I would always just say, just make sure.
Normally, are those IR routes cold
On Saturdays?
weekends? Or not?
Normally, yes. Now, day like today, where we plan to do some local flying, there's a chance that those routes could be hot. And that's where, you know, it's kind of tough. They call for the service, hopefully they can give us some info on, yeah, Vance is open, this route might be being used today.
As a recreational flyer, like me and Brandon and Tyson, we get our cubs and our champs, we just, 15 minutes we go, we don't have time to call, we don't.
Yeah.
As long as we stay under 500 feet, we're probably okay.
Yeah, another phone number you could call that's on here, up here at the top of this poster, and it's in the pamphlets too, is the airspace office. The airspace manager basically manages like scheduling for all the airspace as well. So he'd be able to tell you, yes, this IR route is being used on this day. Now, he's not going to be in the office on a Saturday, so that's not a whole lot of help, but if you know like a day prior, that I might be flying, you know, around this route tomorrow, he can tell you, yeah, Vance is going to be closed, or no, we are doing some local flying. You know, that route might be used on that day. Yeah, I mean, 90% of the time, we're not going to fly on Saturdays, but there is always a chance. Another way to check to see if Vance is over is just check the notice. If the mowers are active, then potential for the low levels to be active as well.
You're an owl, buddy. Check the notice. What?
What is that?
Whoops, I didn't say that partly. Sorry.
If you tune into the VOR, they're at advanced internal volume. If they're active, it will be one thing. If they're not, it's a VanceAFB FlightSafetySeminar closed.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they do broadcast data similar to the VOR.
You did it? Well, are there any other questions for Matt? I mean, this is a captive audience, so, and lunch is on the way here, be here about 5 minutes. So, anybody else? Yeah, Bruce?
What did you just say about broadcasting the ATIS? Is that like on the VOR?
Yeah, I can show them saying, yeah, the Vance VOR 115.4, they'll broadcast the voice ATIS on that frequency as well.
So what kind of separation would you like to see?
Yeah, he does. That's it.
You know, I'm here, if you guys are here, how many feet?
For the just en route transiting, or is it like in buzz? I mean, more the better. I mean, if you're 500 feet, well, that's legal. I mean, they may give us, like if we're IFR, they may give us a heading off. It really depends on what approaches. I don't know what their separation requirements are. If we got VFR traffic, it's only 500 feet, they may give us a heading to decode, but if we're just VFR also, then 1,000 feet is plenty.
Well, it's been a year ago, you guys went 1,000 feet under me, and I thought, I'm surprised you guys didn't say something.
Was it just en route or?
Yeah, we were both en route. You guys are a couple of, with each at 400s, Q1s.
Okay.
There's a pair of those down below me that went underneath them.
Okay, where was it? Like, where you were
Just
around?
southwest of here, 30 miles.
Okay, they were probably going
Southeast.
Yeah, they were probably going to and from that little route right here.
Yeah, would have been right there.
Yeah, they would be either on the route or just exiting the route. So they may not be on the same.
I mean, would your controller have talked to
They're
them
not,
just said, hey, there's traffic up there or not?
well, but if when we're on these local routes, we're not talking to the controller. We're not being controlled by Vance Operation.
Okay.
we don't get reception that low for one. So that's why we don't stay in there. Now, when we start to climb, exit the route, then we'll switch over to the first.
There was no issue, I was painting on the screen. I was watching.
Yeah. I mean, all of our planes have TCAS, so if you're squawking, they should be able to see you as well.
Yeah, they were probably looking at me and I was looking at them.
Yeah, the T1s will either get a resolution advisory, so they have an advanced enough TCAS that it'll tell them, all right, there's a conflict, you need to climb and descend. So theirs is sophisticated enough, they'll conflict on their own. T-38s don't have that, T6s don't either, but T1s do.
Thank you for coming.
Oh, yeah. I'm glad.
So this kind of ends the formal part, if you want to say. If you got questions, one-on-one, ask Matt. The lunches are on the way from, just announcement, Holder Drug in conjunction with the Northwest Pilot Association is sponsoring lunch. We're going to have waters and soda available, chips, and the sandwiches that you ordered. So just hang loose for another 2 or 3 minutes and they'll all be here. And thanks, Matt, for driving up and flying up. Oh, you could have made it now, though. Maybe.
Yeah.
Not quite.